Home Alone is one of those classic movies that makes people like to settle down and get cozy while watching the television together. Today, with Christmas just 2 blocks away, we are going to be reviewing one of the most classic movies of all time. So sit back, grab some pussy and let's get into it. The movie begins in the house of the McCallister family in a Chicago suburb wherein all of them are disorderly preparing for their Christmas vacation in Paris. A pretending police officer named Marv tries to get their attention, but everybody ignores him. Meanwhile, Kevin goes to Kate's room to complain, saying that Uncle Frank's not letting him watch the movie. Unfortunately, Kate ignores Kevin, saying that she's on the phone, so Kevin approaches her as he calls Uncle Frank's names. Hearing that, Kate defends Uncle Frank and says that it may not be suitable for Kevin to watch it. Then suddenly, Peter appears from their bathroom, ordering Kevin to pick up the micro machines downstairs. However, Kevin refuses to do Peter's orders as he hears Kate telling Peter about him playing with the glue guns in the garage. Instead of cleaning his toys downstairs, Kevin explains to his father, resulting in him getting carried by Peter out of the room. Afterward, Aunt Leslie then orders Kevin to pack his suitcase. Because he doesn't know how to pack a suitcase, Kevin immediately seeks help from his older brother Jeff, yet Linny only tells Kevin that Kate will pack his stuff and Kevin shouldn't worry about it. Frustrated, Kevin whines and says that he'll live alone once he grows up because it makes him sick to see full of people in a house. Afterward, he discreetly enters Fuller's room to favor if he could sleep in his room, but Buzz aggressively refuses. Suddenly, Buzz goes directly towards his window to check out the old man Marley. Kevin then finds out about Marley's rumor of murdering his own family using a snow shovel, which the local children eventually call him a serial killer. Later, Peter finally goes downstairs and meets Marv, whom he gets a warning about the burglars roaming around during the holidays. So Peter tells the police officer that their house is taking proper precautions. However, Buzz suddenly interrupts their conversation by taking Peter to the dining room to eat. Meanwhile, Kevin is busy looking for his plain cheese pizza. However, Buzz vulgarly answers him, making Kevin feel annoyed. Because of that, Kevin inadvertently ruins their family dinner as he begins scuffling with his oldest brother Buzz. As a punishment, Kate takes Kevin upstairs and directly puts him inside the attic of their house. But before he enters the attic, Kevin berates Kate and says that everyone in the family hates him. So Kate answers and says Kevin should request Santa for a new family. Yet Kevin still answers back and says he doesn't want to see any of them anymore because family for him is vile. Once inside, Kevin wishes that his family would disappear. During the night, sudden heavy winds damage the power lines in their neighborhood, causing a power outage the following day. However, aside from the damage, it also resets the alarm clocks, causing the McCallister family to oversleep. Panicking, the McCallister family rushes to prepare their things to get to the airport. Afterward, Heather gets an order from Kate to count everyone in the van. However, upon counting her siblings, she accidentally counts Mitch, thinking it's Kevin. Because of that, they accidentally leave Kevin behind. Meanwhile, Kevin wakes up only to find out that the house is already empty. Then, upon going into the kitchen to watch, he suddenly realizes he's alone. So Kevin tries to find his family all over the house. And when no one answers, Kevin eventually thinks that his wish has come true. Instead of getting sad, Kevin even celebrates as he feels thrilled with his newfound freedom. Kevin then spends his day playing and watching inside their house. On the other hand, Kate eventually realizes that Kevin was left behind during their mid-flight. Later at night, 2 burglars named Harry and Marv are planning inside their van to break into other vacant houses in the neighborhood as the Christmas season finally comes. However, they suddenly target the McCallister's magnificent house upon checking the houses and immediately prepare their crowbars. So upon parking outside, Harry and Marv gradually walk to break in when suddenly Kevin notices their shadows. Kevin eventually gets up as he hears them getting into the basement, in which he activates the light so that Harry and Marv will think there's someone inside. Afterward, Kevin hides under the bed as he suddenly becomes frightened. Meanwhile, the McCallister family finally arrives in Paris and runs towards the telephone booth to call the police. Afterwards, Kate orders Peter to book a flight home as she also demands Leslie to call everybody who lives in their street. On the other hand, Kevin goes outside their house to meet Harry and Marv, shouting about not getting afraid anymore. However, he suddenly meets Marley, allowing him to immediately go back inside and scream as he hides under the blanket. Unfortunately, Kate's attempt to call the police at their local station fails even her children, who contacted their neighbors. But after her second attempt, The police station finally gets a police officer to check Kevin in their house. However, the policeman reports that no one's at home after checking at their house. After a while, Kate informs Peter that the policeman is finally checking their house when suddenly she finds out that all flights for the next 2 days are booked. To her dismay, Kate starts panicking again. But when the passenger assistant says they can get Kate a standby while waiting for the next flight, Kate immediately agrees. The following day, Kevin manages to take care of himself by taking a bath alone. Afterward, he goes to Buzz's room when suddenly he discovers his life savings. So Kevin gets all of Buzz's money and uses it to buy a toothbrush at the store. On the other hand, Harry and Marv eventually find out everybody's gone at McCallister's house after hearing the phone call from Peter in the House of Murphys. When Kevin's at the store, Marley suddenly appears beside him, allowing Kevin to run away with his unpaid toothbrush. After successfully passing through the policeman, Kevin walks on his way home when suddenly he almost gets hit by Harry and Marv's van. Kevin was shocked when he realizes that it's Marv who attempts to trespass on their house, so Marv decides to follow Kevin to know which house he's going to. Later at night, Kevin tricks Harry and Marv into thinking his family is still home. Harry and Marv put their plans on hold after looking at the McCallister's house window full of people's shadows. Meanwhile, Peter and the rest of his family stay in his brother's apartment in Paris. However, instead of bonding with his children, Peter chooses to keep himself busy and continuously finds Peter. On the other hand, Kate manages to get a flight back to the US after convincing an older woman to exchange her flight with hers. Going back to Kevin, he suddenly starts missing his family while looking at their family picture. The following day, Kevin starts his routine of bathing himself and buying groceries alone. Afterward, he cleans his clothes in their laundry while Harry and Marv wait outside their house. However, Marv suddenly orders Harry to get into their house without double thinking, so Harry immediately walks directly to the back of the house when suddenly Kevin notices his shadow outside. Kevin turns the television on to let Harry know someone's inside. Then he uses the fireworks to sound like there's gunshots at their house. Fortunately, Kevin successfully pushes Harry away because of his tricks. Meanwhile, Harry reports to Marv about what he heard at McCallister's house. So Marv tells Harry to wait and see the people inside. On the other hand, Kate only gets as far as Scranton, Pennsylvania, so she attempts to book a flight again back to Chicago, but unfortunately, every seat is booked. Frustrated and losing her cool, Kate eventually raises her voice while talking to the airport employee. Little did Kate know that Gus Polinski, the lead member of a traveling polka band, suddenly overhears her complaints and approaches her. Gus then excuses Kate from the airport employee, in which he introduces himself as a member of the band afterwards. After getting to know about Gus's band, Kate eventually accepted an offer from Gus to travel with them to Chicago on their way to Milwaukee in a moving van. It turns out, Gus and his band's flight got cancelled. Kate gracefully accepts it after hearing Gus say he overheard her problems earlier. Meanwhile, Harry and Marv finally realize that Kevin lives at McCallister's after hours of waiting outside their home. Afterward, Marv looks over the window to check on Kevin, but little does he know Kevin sees him in the Christmas ball. So Kevin pretends and calls Peter, but Marv already knows that he's home alone. Afterward, Kevin opens the other window only to overhear them discussing plans to break into their house later that night. On the night of Christmas Eve, Kevin talks to the local Santa Claus impersonator. Kevin then asks him to give his message to the real Santa Claus, which is bringing his family back for Christmas. Afterward, the Santa Claus impersonator agrees and gives Kevin 2 pieces of candies while walking home. Kevin suddenly sees a group of families celebrating Christmas Eve in their house. Kevin felt sad when he sees them as he walks. However, he suddenly stops in front of the church and decides to watch a choir perform instead of going home. Upon visiting the church, Kevin meets Marley again. So Marley approaches him and sits beside him. Afterward, Marley points out his granddaughter in the choir, whom he never gets to meet. Eventually, Marley dispels the rumors about him and reveals that he can't get to his granddaughter because he's not welcomed by his son. Technically, Marley and his son has been estranged for a lot of years now. Fortunately, Marley finally convinces himself to call his son after hearing Kevin suggesting that he should reconcile with his family. Afterward, Kevin quickly returns home to rig the house with booby traps to take on the burglars. Kevin then spends his night defending their house with tricks. Afterward, he microwaves his food for dinner while Harry and Marv begin to trespass their house. Meanwhile, when Kevin attempts to eat his dinner, the clock suddenly bells, signifying that Harry and Marv will enter their house So Kevin quickly gets his gun and discreetly shoots Marv's manhood using the cat door. So Harry and Marv attempt to break in on the other doors, but unfortunately, they still fail. Yet Harry never gives up as he continues to enter the basement. Because of that, Harry springs from the trap. On the other hand, Harry successfully enters the house and experiences the same thing with Marv. Technically, Harry and Marv struggled to catch Kevin because of his numerous tricks. Meanwhile, Kevin finally calls the police and flees to his treehouse. Afterwards, he lures Harry and Marv into Murphy's family's house, which they had previously broken into. So Harry and Marv follow him when suddenly Harry gets an idea to ambush him as their revenge. Unfortunately, Kevin faces his punishment after getting caught by Harry and Marv, as Harry's starting to torture Kevin. Marley eventually intervenes and knocks them unconscious with his snow shovel. Later, the police finally arrive and arrest Harry and Marv. On the other hand, Kevin happily waves at Harry after turning around in his direction. Afterward, Kevin disappointingly sits on the couch after realizing that his family is still gone. The movie ends with Kevin eventually hearing his mom Katie calling for him as she enters the house. So Kevin quickly goes downstairs and finally reconciles with his mom after hearing her apology. Eventually, Kevin spends his Christmas with his family as he appallingly watches his siblings Peter, Buzz, Jeff, Megan and Linny entering the house while hugging Kate. It turns out they just waited in Paris until they could obtain a direct flight to Chicago. However, Kevin skips on talking about his encounter with Harry and Marv, saying that he only hangs around while they are away. Then suddenly, Peter notices Harry's knocked out gold tooth on the floor, but he gets no answer as to who owns it. On the other hand, Kevin discovers Marley reuniting with his son, daughter-in-law and granddaughter over the window, so he happily waves at Marley after noticing him.